right, we are now recording. All right, thank you and welcome, Sara. When reading your name, it says Sara Curley. The first character from a long-time cartoon and a movie sitcom that I used to watch as a young kid. You might have heard of them, but the Three Stooges. So when I read your name as Sara Curley, I thought, oh, Curly, Moe, and Larry.
Well,
And
Larry's my grandfather, so
oh, wow.
when people ever came across him, they'd always be asking him, "So Larry Curly, where's Moe?"
Would that have been your dad or a brother, maybe?
That's my grandfather. Yeah, that would be my
Oh,
grandfather.
wow.
Larry Curly. Yeah,
Yeah.
I
But where
spent
is
some time
Moe?
with him. Where we don't know. There's no Moe. We've got an Uncle Ron. I've got an Uncle Paul. I got some Jims. No Moes though. No Moe.
That would have made for a very funny conversation, especially around Thanksgiving.
Yeah.
So now that I've finally got you on the podcast, I got you for episode 4. Thank you. And to all our viewers and listeners, I hope you can give our guest, Sara, a round of applause. And we are moving on to the first question, which is, who is Sara Curley? And please explain in your own words.
Ooh, who am I? Well, I'm would identify myself as a two-spirit woman of Haudenosaunee heritage. So I grew up in Six Nations, Ontario, primarily with my dad, often with my grandmother and my grandfather as well. And my Indigenous connection comes through my grandfather and my father there. So he still lives back home on Six in the same land, in the same area that my grandfather built the house on and whatnot. So him and my sister have been living there forever, basically. And after that, who else am I? I'm a coach. I'm an educator. So I teach around Indigenous culture and Indigenous engagement principles. Basically, I talk to non-Indigenous peoples on how to create good relationship with Indigenous folks. I've been out in BC now for a long time, so I've traveled. I've seen a lot of Turtle Island. And that really is who I am. I guess I'm somebody who travels a lot, who's seen a lot, who's got that connection back home, back to the land, but is also, supporting these works of reconciliation, supporting this work of awareness, and really building something new for a future.
Mm-hmm. Wow, you sound like a very interesting person, and I, in the future, if I ever got the chance, I would love to take you out for coffee. I did have my first traveling experience because I grew up majorly along Highway 16. Whenever I'm asked where you grew up or where your hometown is, I say along Highway 16 because I was born in Saskatoon, but I grew up in like different small towns or in different small cities along Highway 16. Right. So primarily Saskatchewan, but my first traveling outside of Saskatchewan was to BC, and it was to Nanaimo, where I have distant relatives, distant cousins out there. And so I passed through like Calgary and Banff and Drumheller, but I always wanted to like visit longer or to stay overnight. So would you share a little bit of what it is living in Vancouver? They say it's expensive, but what is it overall?
Oh, BC is definitely expensive. Vancouver. So I'm actually over in Lekwungen territory in what is commonly known as Victoria, our capital of the province here. If you're following the provincial kind of guidelines of things, it's expensive. It is definitely pricey. It's beautiful though. It is so lovely here. We're spoiled with the weather often. It's been getting a lot hotter during the summers than it used to, but our winters are typically really mild and a little gray and wet, but not really snowy or icy or cold too much. There's so much wildlife and nature. Like I have friends that follow the whales, like the orcas, and snap pictures of them all the time. Just this week, they had 3 encounters with some pods of orcas. and one of them came up very, very, very close to them. Yeah, like within 10 feet kind of thing. Is quite the experience. And that's kind of a normal thing. Like I was out in um we were in Hayat territory for a festival, and it's this bay where the whales will come in low tide, and they'll dance in the waters, and they'll scratch their bellies and their backs on the sandbars there, and that's just a normal occurrence.
Does that happen like every so often? Like, is it occasional, or is it quite regular, or is it seldomly, like on a rare basis?
The local pods, the transient orcas, they come by Victoria fairly regularly. And from what I know, the whale dancers out in that bay, that's a pretty regular occurrence. That's a place they come and visit like throughout the seasons and always come back to, and have been going there for generations and generations and generations. So the family who is the caretakers of that beach, so the beach was a gift way back in the day. It was a gift. It was as a wedding present, as an engagement gift. And so that family and that matriarchal line's been taking care of that beach for generations and generations now, many, many generations. And they're saying, nope, this has always been the place where whales come and dance.
Yeah, sounds beautiful, but I would also assume it would be quite costly, quite expensive to maintain and take care of, especially wildlife. And you hear of wildlife reservations, and they often have to have some form of help, financial help.
I'd say up there where I was, right, that is within First Nations territory and land, and
Okay.
they keep good care of that area, as they always have, and they have since time memorial. So that specific nation and those people have a deep connection to that bay and those areas, and have been there long, long time. I mean, their traditional summer town was one of the first villages. So this is one of the First Nations that had contact here on the West Coast when the tall ships came in. And so they've had a long connection with colonialism and with that history. But from what I understand and the stories I heard, though, like their trading history goes back even before that. So like when these Europeans showed up, they're just like, oh, a new ship. I wonder if they want some things, and brought out their stuff to trade right away, because it wasn't a new experience for them, from what I understood. The new kind of ship, a new kind of boat, one they hadn't seen before, but they're still curious and wanting to get into trade.
Mhm.
I feel like this little aside just speaks to what I do, where I'm always
Yes.
kind of like educating, and like what are these lessons, or what are these things that I have learned and experienced that I can bring forward to others to really expand our understanding of each other. Right? Just because we're Indigenous doesn't mean we're the same.
Mhm.
Definitely
Yes.
not. Right? Like I'm Haudenosaunee, I'm Ganyaganok, that's commonly known as Mohawk. Right? We're from the Great Lakes.
Oh,
That's the region we're from. We're from New York, like what's now New York State, up towards the St. Lawrence and around the Great Lake regions. We're rivers and forests. That's what we're about. Right? Our canoes, when we compare them to the West Coast canoes, are very different. Very different. Ours are like quick and easy to make out of birch bark and some birch straps. Here, they're these beautiful, ornate, giant dugout canoes that are just I love seeing when they're paddling in the paddling ceremonies in the season. Like they'll do a tour, all the nations around here do a tour and visit each other, and they'll pick up more from each town each nation they visit, pick up some more paddlers, and it's just this big canoe trip that they do all together. It's magical. uh
yes. I can just, I can just, I'm trying to imagine, but my mind for some reason is just not going into the creative direction of imagining. I'm more of a visual person, so I can hear a story, and there's only so far I can go with visualizing it and creating a picture in my mind. But I'm a visual. I need to see what it would have looked like, or even if someone were to use their hands to describe, it's this size, or it was this depth, or But yeah, it sounds very fascinating, and I admire the work you're doing, and I admire the confidence that you bring within the field, and I admire how you take all of your lessons and all of the stories and the knowledge that was passed to you, and you use it and you regenerate it, and you bring such a unique feature in storytelling. That is quite admirable. I admire that.
Thank, thank you. I mean, they say we're storytellers, right? Like,
Yes.
we're people of words. That's how our histories and our lessons and our important everything of important was always shared, right? It was through our words.
Yeah, orally. And, I've seen quite a lot on social media where there's, I don't want to say complaining, but it's quite close to complaints on social media of how non-Indigenous are saying, how come you don't have your Bannock recipes written down? Or how come you don't have this written down? Or you don't have this to, just pass off a written document? It's because we are, as you said, we're storytellers. We pass it along through voice and to ear. It's not something that we took for granted to write down. It was sacred to us. It was special to us. I'm certainly a what they call a returning native, or rather a native who's reclaiming herself. But from the stories that I've heard, and from the principles of the First Nations and the Métis and the Inuit, from all those who are Turtle Islanders, were very protective, and we're very much, we guard our stories, we guard our knowledge, and it's not something that we take for granted to write down. It's very much something that you have to sit in front of the person, similar to how we're doing now, is be face to face. You gotta look into the eyes of the person, and you gotta see the person's face, and then you gotta share your stories and your knowledge, and it's an exchange of information.
Very much so an exchange, right? Just as much as the person telling the story is an active participant, so are you as the listener. Like, there's a really important space for the person hearing the story to be in. Like, that's just without that person to hear the story, to hear the words, then what does it matter? Does it matter if we're saying anything?
Yes, it's very much an echo in the wind. I mean, the wind, the trees, there would be certainly Mother Earth would listen, but I do agree, it would just be gliding in the wind. It would sort of just fall where it may. It wouldn't really have a soundboard, which is really what a listener is a soundboard. They listen to the information, and then they decode the information, and then they interpret it in their own meaning, and then they either paraphrase it and returning back to you, and you're continuing the conversation. Or if they're not very much of a listener, then they're just, it's just garbage at that point.
Yeah, yeah. I mean, we've got enough stories around listening, the importance of it. So lots of those that I've heard through
Yes.
time. Yeah.
Mhm.
Mm.
Well, thank you. I'm fascinated to know who the person is behind the name. I'm a little sad that you guys don't have a Mo and you're Larry Curly Mo. But when I read your name, that was the first sitcom TV series from my childhood that I reminisced about, and I was like, oh. And for a minute there, it took me. I knew Mo and Curly right off the bat, and then it took me quite a few seconds to think, okay, who's the bald dude? Who's the guy with no hair? And I'm like, Larry. So it's Mo, Curly, Larry.
Yeah.
Yeah, they were they're quite the comedians back then.
Oh yeah, we used to watch lots of them. I mean, we didn't really get much on the antenna, so
Oh yes.
it's not like we had cable or anything like that. Right?
Yes, and
Yeah,
that too. I can remember the antenna. And me and my mom, we still have the fat little TV, because the TVs back then, they were fat and they were small. So we still have our fat little TV, and you know, back before cable even was, you know, sort of a big thing. Uh, you had to have an antenna, or you had to have some sort of cord or some sort of connection, and you only got, you know, you were lucky to even get one channel. I was lucky enough to get two channels, but it was touch and go.
Yeah, that'd be the CBC and maybe something else.
Yes.
Yeah, CBC
Yes.
and maybe something else, which is great. I mean,
Yes.
yeah. Ooh.
Oh, such a walk down memory lane.
What else?
We'd be definitely considered old folk.
I hope not.
I
Ah,
was born in
no.
2003, and you
Okay,
know,
okay,
I'm
well.
I'm familiar with stuff that, you know, the younger Gen Z would probably look at me and go, huh? Yeah,
True.
I still can recall certain bits and pieces of obsolete technology.
There's a bit about our experiences that lead to that, I think, a little bit at times. But yeah, I mean, I'm a bit older than you are. I'm 43
Mm-hmm.
myself at this point, so
Yeah.
heading there. But I don't think I'm never gonna feel old. I don't think. I hope not. I'll try to keep that
Oh,
youthfulness and that young at heartness, that wonder
oh.
for life forever.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, I envy that, the feeling of not following through with what is certainly dished out there of feeling old and the ageism, and you know, especially around women, it, you know, feel like that's more of the heavier subject of womanhood is, you know, are you really too old for anything? But no, I certainly want to keep my youth about me, and I find it that I'm a unique human being. I'm a unique human being to get to know, because I I still, you know, like I said, me and my mom, we still have the fat little TV. We still have her DVD collection. My mom, she was, you know, very adamant of not getting rid of that, and I admire my mom. She still has the VHS tapes. You know, it's obsolete technology, but she's certainly hung on to them after all these years. I mean, even the encyclopedias. My mom still has the encyclopedias from when she homeschooled me. She homeschooled me for quite a couple of years there. Uh, and she still has those. So she still even has dictionary and a thesaurus, and I'm quite amazed at the woman my mom is. You know, she very much holds on to the beautiful and the very raw pieces of her time and my time. And I have a taste for, you know, older music. I'm not so much into the pop and the ippity boppity of music of this time. I'm very much a Fleetwood Mac girl, ABBA, Patsy Cline, Johnny Cash, Hank Williams, uh, AC/DC, you know, Elvis Presley. I'm very much into the tune of that music. To me, I find it more pleasant to listen to. The music today, it's not a malleable palette for myself as a listener. I'm more of an old soul. I've been referred to an old soul by quite a few family members, close loved ones, refer to me as an old soul, and I admire that. Even to this day, I have quite a few bits and pieces that would certainly be relics, or be stated as vintage pieces.
I'm hearing that you know what you like and you
Yes.
very much enjoy what you enjoy.
Mhm.
And that classic
Yes.
music, I mean, it's classic for a reason, right? It's still
Hmm.
so
Yeah.
many people still listening to it today.
Yes. And, you know, talking about older music, I mean, I'm not gonna lie, and you know, I certainly know deep down in the inside parts of me, I know that my intuition that a lot of people would agree with me, but Patsy Cline really had great vocals. Like, she could hit a range. I mean, I've certainly tried as a little kid, try to hit her notes, but I didn't find it. I I would end up sounding like a croaking frog for a minute there.
I mean, the croaks of the frog, it's got its place. It's an important sound out there in the nature of things and all of it, right? Yeah, no, good music is good. And Patsy Cline's got such a beautiful voice.
Tammy Wynette, even Loretta Lynn. I'm just so. But enough about me and enough diddle doddling around. Moving on to our second question. On your LinkedIn profile, your job description is corporate house lead at Indigenous Community for Leadership and Development Group. Oh, that's a mouthful. What does this role entail, and can you share your journey that led you to the role?
Absolutely, it'd be my pleasure. So the Indigenous Community for Leadership and Development, I'm going to just call ICLD going forward. It's a little easier on the tongue. I discovered them through my mom, actually. I was calling her up. I was getting ready to make a big change in my life. So for 20 years, I worked in IT. And as a manager, as a systems analyst, a support person, lots of different areas within IT. I was kind of all over the place. I'm one of those generalists, not really a master of any one thing, but I can solve all the problems because I got all the solutions. Yeah. And I just had a shift. I'm like, you know what? Computer systems are getting a little boring and predictable. I really want to work with human systems and humans and people. I love people. And so I went off and I got some certifications around coaching. I went and got a trauma-informed certification on top of that, got some training on internal family systems and a bunch of other wellness modalities and support models. And I was looking to go out on my own and leave my cushy corporate IT job, and because it was just a comfort zone. And if I'm going to be doing more in this world, I got to get out of them comfort zones. So I decided to go off on my own, and I was telling my mom about it. And she's like, "Oh, you should reach out to this ICLD people, and they might be exactly what you're doing or where you're going." And I did. And basically there was one day in between my last day at my cushy union job and the first day that I started partnering with ICLD. And then for 6 months, I was in deep with them, just so I could really understand everything that we offer and everything that we do there. My role now as the corporate house lead is really as our lead facilitator for a lot of our corporate services for non-Indigenous organizations and companies and government groups. So if we're talking about like City of North Vancouver or Fortis BC or other non-Indigenous companies, that tends to be who I'm working with for ICLD and who I'm supporting primarily. That could be bringing in cultural awareness training. Maybe it's about Indigenous engagement principles. Maybe we're talking about how to create some safe employment services for Indigenous peoples. But we can get into some really big details there. Or maybe we're looking at what their reconciliation journey is going to be like. What is that plan going to be like for them? How are they going to move forward their story of reconciliation? So those are the kind of things I support ICLD with. And then the last little while, it's after that first 6 months, I've had more time now to branch out. Now that I know what we're doing as ICLD, and so I've been able to branch out and kind of bring what they have and what they offer together with what I do on my own, and just meet people in a lot of different spaces now. Right? I can meet you as a professional in your corporate space. I can meet you one-on-one in your personal life, and try to bring you into that space of really powerful leadership in all these environments. That's kind of what my goal is to make strong leaders everywhere for all of us.
Wow. I just want to know you more and more. I really want to pick your brain, if you will. It's a very admirable I know I keep saying admirable, but really, I grew up on a thesaurus and dictionary, so I'm a little sad that that's the only synonym that I could come up with for admirable, but it is admirable. I really do enjoy hearing your story, and you've got a very beautiful voice. It's sort of along the lines of Tammy Wynette and Loretta Lynn, where you could, hear stories from this person for the end of time. I really do admire the fact that ICLD is
Yeah.
that going to be the shortened abbreviation. Um, so I admire how ICLD, especially as a corporate lead, that you have the opportunity and you have the sort of the pathway to meet individuals, whether in their professional life or whether in their corporate life. I really find, after hearing that, I find that many individuals would probably think, okay, great. When's the next meeting? When can I schedule you in for a meeting? Certainly, brings about that curiosity and that intrigue to want to learn more, and the yearning to grab as much information as they can, and to have that network, to have that connection, and to have something to take away. It's very much a beautiful story, and it very beautiful leadership role, especially for Indigenous people. Many of our Indigenous brothers and sisters, they're lost, because sadly there's not enough opportunities. And I say that because, thinking about it, when have you or I, when have either of us heard, whether in the newspaper or from word of mouth or from a family friend, someone did make it through and is working at NASA, an Indigenous astronaut? Or when have we heard of, the stories that someone is, thinking about going into being a crime scene investigator or being a research scientist? And so, therefore, that is the purpose of the Indigenous Central Podcast.
I mean, there's some strong voices out there doing some big work, some big Indigenous voices doing some big work out there. I'm just trying to think of a few. I mean, who's coming in my head right now and who I can't really release would be just the only person I can think of right now would be Graham Greene. And I'm thinking of him because he just passed today. He moved on to his next journey today.
Oh, wow.
So
The
I
actor?
know, yeah, the actor. And he's from
Aww.
he's from back home, from back where I'm from. So he's Haudenosaunee. He's from Oneida. So it's, it's a day. It's been,
Yeah.
I mean, I feel like he touched so many of us across Turtle Island, like Indigenous and non-Indigenous, right? From all of his different roles and the different characters he's played, his different performances. I was looking through some of his work today, trying to make a little post or a little reel, maybe to celebrate him. And I was wondering if they had any of his songs on like the social media to put on the reels. And what I found was him reading Brother Bear. And it's just like, I'm just so happy to just hear the opening lines of him opening the story, speaking Haudenosaunee at times with some of the names that were in the story, and just having him open it was a really wonderful space. And to hear him approaching the children in such a direct way with that story, right? Like when we think of his movies or shows, they're not maybe like, I can remember I wasn't always a big fan of him when I was younger. His stuff was kind of too serious, right? Yeah, maybe too young to get some of the jokes, though I'd say North of 60 is a whole different story. That was always funny, and I'll always enjoy a good watch of North of 60. But yeah, just seeing him in these different places has been really wonderful. And I like my dad and was just talking to me about it not too long ago when I was on the phone recently with him back home. He's like, "Oh yeah, I ran into Graham Greene recently." And I sat and we had a chit chat and he's just in the area.
Wow.
I,
Just hearing you casually say that your dad had a sit-down conversation with Graham Greene, knowing that he wasn't how, certain people or certain individuals or certain organizations in the movie industry would describe him as an A-list celebrity. He probably would be a B-list celebrity, but nonetheless, hearing that your dad had a sit-down conversation with a well-known Indigenous actor, I'm envious, but also I find it fascinating and awe-inspiring that he is a down-to-earth person and he felt comfortable that he could just sit down and have a coffee, have a conversation. Because what we see in the tabloids, what we see in social media, celebrities, especially A-list celebrities, they don't have the opportunity to just sit down and have a conversation with someone from their hometown. Sadly, that is what is the perceived reality is, they very much have to be within a close inner circle of bodyguards and those who have to, walk with them. I find it very much, he would have been someone who I would have loved to approach, especially I saw bits and pieces of the behind the scenes or the interviews of North of 60, and he was very, I don't want to say quiet, but very a low and sort of calm and soothing way about him whenever he spoke, whenever he answered questions, or whenever he told a story. Even in his North of 60, when he would have those scenes where he'd have the temper or he'd get mad, it was very a low key aggression or a very low key temper. It wasn't, it wasn't gruff or rough. It was very much within the low key about him.
it's quiet but powerful kind of thing.
Yes.
Anger. Like he didn't have to say much. He didn't have to say it loud. When he said it, you do.
Yes.
Kind of thing. Yeah. Yeah. And that's his acting too, right? That's just speaking to his degree and his level of acting. He's such a wonderful performer. And I think as you're doing this work, I have this feeling as you venture out and you connect with more Indigenous folk, you're going to discover that within our communities, our celebrities are just our cousins and our neighbors and our friends. So you'll have these moments where you're going to be sitting next to somebody who you just idolize absolutely,
Yes.
and it'll just be, oh, okay,
Mhm.
they're just another person.
Yes.
They see me like that too, and themselves
Mhm.
like that. Yeah.
Yeah. That's such a beautiful takeaway. That's such a beautiful dream or something to look forward to, is to be able to sit down with the actresses or the actors of our Indigenous communities and have that conversation, maybe have, I don't know, have a cup of coffee at a local cafe, that's within walking distance, and have a few pieces of bannock, a few servings of bannock, and just sit there and talk until we are blue in the face. But as a reclaiming native, I didn't really grow up with a large array of what it is. I'm discovering that now as an adult, because as an adult, I can go after the information, I can go after those movies and those stories and the music, and I can, sift through the internet, or I can sift through Spotify or YouTube or Netflix or whatever streaming service for whatever media, and I can find them through my own research. But that being said, growing up, all I knew was Hollywood and the A-list celebrities and their junk and their drama and their garbage leaked
Yeah.
out. So that's where I made the distinction of that's I'm in awe in that, and I'm envious of the fact that not so much jealous, but so much just wishful thinking that your dad had the opportunity to sit down with an Indigenous actor, Graham Greene, whereas, you know, as I said, from what we are shown, you can't get in within a meter of a famous celebrity, but to be able to do that for your dad to sit down and, you know, call you up and say, yeah, I sat down and had a coffee, and just, you know, roll off the tongue and casually tell you on a phone call that, you know, Graham Greene was here and we had a chit chat.
Yeah, ran into Graham Greene. We just had a chit chat, said hi, shared some words. He's a really chill guy. That's basically my dad's words about him. So it's pretty neat. I mean, I feel very humbled by this work that I get to do for a lot of that same reasons. Is there's folks that I'm getting to meet or share rooms with that the work that I see them doing is so powerful and so important in our communities and in our nations that I can't be anything but humbled to be in that space with them.
Mhm.
I was at an Indigenous wellness gathering last year here in Victoria, and just the powerful, strong, diverse ability that was on display of these Indigenous participants, individuals that had their own major challenges, I'm going to use that word, and uniqueness to navigate in their life, but they're still putting in the effort and putting in extra work, more effort than you or I might need to put in to do the same thing, to keep advancing just a better space for all of us and bringing a better awareness and a better amount of care into this world for all of us. That's a powerful place to stand.
Mm-hmm.
Share a room like that. Or I'll see some young entrepreneurs here on the island, and I see them all over the place now. They're on all the little videos. They're getting spotlights all over, highlighting the amazing, amazing work they're doing around one, just having being a young Indigenous woman running a business,
Mm-hmm.
a successful business, and one that employs a large degree of diverse ability individuals, so people with diverse abilities, and one that was forwarding as well, centering of Indigenous employees too, and work for Indigenous folks. So here, this one individual is just touching on so many powerful spaces, and this is just an everyday person, just somebody running a business. And just I go out and I might speak to a room of 20 or 30 people. Right? I show up into a place and maybe I'm with an organization for 6-7 hours, maybe 12, maybe a couple days at the most. But hopefully the work that I've done doesn't end there. And those 20, maybe 40 people I've spoken with, they're going to be now bringing that to everybody that they touch and they work with. And that's where the real space is when I leave. I am hoping that the next time I step back into that space or that environment, that when I look around, I'm going to see the lessons I brought in action. And maybe I'll see more Indigenous people being representative on the staffing of an organization. Maybe I'll see new initiatives from a municipal organization, for example, from a city, being oh, we've got an elder circle now that we work together in partnership with our neighboring First Nations communities or Métis communities. And now we have our elder circle that is helping us to just be a little bit more considerate and a little bit more holistic in how we're planning and how we're supporting our town or our city. So that's really where hopefully I get to see my work down the line bearing amazing fruit, because other people will be there and be empowered to do that work for themselves and be just chasing their dreams.
Yes, and not just as a hostess. Yes, I am a hostess and I'm the owner of the Indigenous Central Podcast, but that is the same vision and that is the same trajectory of my dream that I hope the platform, will eventually grow over time, and I'll be a mentor. I'll be a leader. I will be able to have a feet of my own and maybe be an investor and pay it forward through communities once, of course, the YouTube creator YouTube um, monetary generates income. That's one of my goals, is to give back, especially to community-led initiatives such as providing clean water. That's sadly one of the downfalls of our reserves is, we have unclean water, we have unsanitary resources, living conditions, and it's not our fault. We didn't ask for this to be brought upon ourselves, but this is the hand that we were dealt hundreds of years ago, and so this is the hand to which now we have to deal with. And also, I want to support young entrepreneurs. So if down the line someone wants to um, support a part of our Indigenous sector as an entrepreneur, as a business person, or as an advisor, or they have an idea and they're not able to get funding, I'm hoping that through a foundation in the near future or within the future of being a podcast owner and having this platform, I can be that voice, I can be that ally, and I can be the cheerleader that they never had. And so that's what I look forward to the most.
Awesome. I'm sure you're going to go far with all of this. I mean, you're on your 4th episode already.
Yes.
Some wonderful guests, if I may say so myself.
Of course you can. I mean, you have pink glasses, and that's my favorite color, and already you're shining through with the beauty of being a woman, but also you're shining through with as a person who I just want to get to know. I mean, you're wearing pink glasses, your background's pink, you're wearing my favorite color, and I just want to know more about you. It's very appealing.
I'm curious. So you're in your connection. You're reconnecting, right, to your
Yes.
heritage and your indigeneity. Which community are you connected to, or your family connected to?
Little Pine First Nations.
Little Pine.
So,
Okay.
yes.
Yeah.
So, again, in Saskatchewan.
Yeah.
From where I'm from, Saskatchewan, all along Highway 16, and that's exactly where Little Pine is.
Yeah. Sure is. Yeah, I've been making some friends from out that way. I mean, this is something else I think you're going to find out as you explore this environment and as you create more of this connection and bring more of us together, is those of us that are out here doing the work, we're doing the work, and you'll begin to notice and see us soon enough, and you're among us. Mm-hmm. There's more and more of us out there every day, putting ourselves out there to advance our community sovereignty, to advance reconciliation, to advance ourselves even, right? We can't forget about ourselves. We're still important in all of this. And it's really amazing to see these things and to see all of this and to see you joining this and becoming a part of this experience too.
Yeah. Yes. That's very much the objective. That's very much the vision. And that is the principle of the Indigenous Central Podcast. It's not just a podcast that says, oh, hey, ho, I am being interviewed by a hostess. No, these are very much conversation-oriented virtual meetings where we can, get along and we can find, that level of chemistry and that connection, and we can feel comfortable with sharing stories and veering off topic a little bit and then coming back to the topic, just having a conversation. And for individuals such as ourselves, but also individuals who would, be curious, who would be intrigued to learn about the Indigenous Central podcast. I hope, that is my biggest lingering hope, is that from this, listeners and viewers alike, they will find this interesting, and the more they engage with these videos and these episodes and on the channel and on the social media platforms, and they ask questions, and they, sparks flying of their curiosity, that they're not just learning from Indigenous professionals. They're learning about Indigenous professionals. They're learning, okay, what is it that led you to your career? And, they're learning about your career, the ins and outs, and what you are able to share. And, is that an interesting career for them to want to go through, once they finish their high school and their education, for wherever, what stage they are in their life, they'll be able to say, oh, here is a hostess. She interviewed someone within the realm of this career. Perhaps maybe, I could reach out and throw a comment and, ask if there's a way that I could dip my foot into this career, or I could volunteer, or I could, have a sit down conversation and ask questions. So this is really a podcast that we start here. This is the baseline. The episodes and the seasons, this is the baseline. And, from here, all it has to do is just branch out and just go into different avenues and different paths, and sort of, see where it goes from here.
And the sky's the limit.
Mm-hmm.
Just keep going right up to the sky world and beyond if you need to.
Yes.
Yeah. Yeah.
Yes. All right. We're gonna be taking too long, and you're clearly yawning, and I don't want it to be contagious, but I can tell that you must be tired. You've mentioned you've had quite a day, and I don't want to. Yeah.
It's been a big day. I'm traveling tomorrow to go into the interior BC, up into the mountains, to support one of the communities there and do some work for them directly. So, be lots of traveling. Yeah, it'll be a beautiful, beautiful space, I'm sure.
Yes.
Lakes and rivers, mountains.
The best of luck to that. All right, we better get on to the questions, because I don't want to keep you up. I don't want to keep you just sitting here. I mean, this is a beautiful conversation, and I'm sure we both love to continue the conversation. But moving on to question number 3. What is the biggest downfall you faced as a CHL? Yeah, at work, at home, and in your community, or in your community?
I'd say the biggest challenges is there's a fair bit of traveling for this current job. And so sometimes, I'm away from home for a while and I don't get to see all that. There's been a couple times where, sometimes the work we're doing is pretty big work and there's a lot to carry in that work. So ICLD, where they started was working with communities first, was with Indigenous communities first, and they worked with over 90 communities across BC. And they've been doing this for 20 years. The whole working with non-Indigenous organizations and the whole corporate side of things is relatively new because we need support. We need more allies to support our communities, so we needed to bring in more allies. One of the core programs they do, and one of the things that they do in all of their programs, like regardless if it's a job skills program or bringing a community or anything, is there's a 5-day in grief and loss program that we do, 5 full days where we explore grief, we explore loss, we look through the skills, we look through Indigenous teachings, we really bring a two-eyed seeing approach to it, and that's big work. And so regardless of where I'm doing that work, that's going to be hard, and that's okay. And when you're sitting with people as they might be exploring their pains and their troubles, their challenges that they've had in their lives, their traumas, like that's a place where it's going to be hard. And to expect it to be easy, Yeah, no, no, thank you.
That's a
Let's,
joke.
let's expect it to be hard and be there for those difficult things for others.
Mhm. In the same way, an elder, or in the same way, a knowledge keeper, which technically you are a knowledge keeper. You're opening your doors and you're opening your mind and your heart. You're exploring different avenues with your job, within your role. And again, lacking in synonyms here, but it is admirable. And I wish you the best of luck. Really, I do. You're a very unique and you're a very observant person, and you're very much in the presence. You're very much grassroots, and thank you for that comment. I look forward to, you know, imbuing and embodying grassroots and being one-on-one and connecting through these conversations within these virtual meetings with the guests. So thank you.
Thank you.
So question number 4. What are some steps to consider for achieving reconciliation, and where do we start?
That's a wonderful question. One that I think of a lot and get asked around a fair bit. And I'd say for at the individual or at the organizational level, the first place to start is understand your story in relation to Indigenous history and colonialization, right? If you're non-Indigenous, was your family like from a farming line? Did you come in here and just take a claim of land and start to build that land up? Well, where did that land come from? Whose land was that? Was there a treaty in place? These are all elements of your personal, or could be of your personal reconciliation story. And so now that you can build that, the harm that might be connected in your area or your history or your organization, right? Like if you were a bank, maybe you were part of the reason Indigenous folks were having troubles getting loans, or still have troubles getting loans right now because of our land ownership situation on a lot of reserves. Right? That's part of that story. So how do you now start to reconcile that? How do you create repair in light of that harm or that unknown pain that may have happened in the past? How are you going to bring repair forward to make that reconciliation real? And that means there's going to be partnerships. You're going to have conversations with the Indigenous communities and your neighbors that you're working around and working nearby. They're going to have to be a part of it. But knowing your story first as a non-Indigenous organization or person, that is like number one for reconciliation. And I do see really reconciliation is primarily the work of non-Indigenous organizations and people with the leadership of Indigenous peoples. So the work's got to be done by the non-Indigenous, but we've got to lead that work for them. So we need to direct them. We need to guide. We need to show them the good ways and how to move this forward in a good, healthy way, so we can get back to good relations. We can get back to repair, and we can get back to sharing this land like our two-row wampum, like our original treaties would have honored us and asked us to share these lands with. Right? We're so sovereign. We're all sovereign here on these lands, sharing it. We've got our boats, our canoe, and they've got their tall boats, and we are sharing this river. We are sharing this waterway, and in a way that's supposed to support each other. That is the original treaty, at least for my mind. So, can we get back to that? That idea of mutual respect, mutual support, of mutual sovereignty.
Yeah. There's a lot to be said of the treaties and of reconciliation.
Yeah.
Speaking with my last guest, Amanda Balsley, she's owner and a mental health therapist of her own clinic. And she said something that has stuck with me even now in the conversation of answering the question of reconciliation. Hearing your answer is, it's very much poisoned. She didn't use the word exactly, but from what I am carrying from the conversation, it's very much poisoned, and I do agree it is poisoned reconciliation, because reconciliation, in a way, it's like, a free-for-all boomerang, reconciliation day, reconciliation t-shirts, reconciliation da 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 da. But where's the heart of reconciliation in these events, in these, in these posters, in these banners, in, it being shared on social media and being, hi, there's Truth and Reconciliation Day, come and have a barbecue or a parade. There's good to that. There's an element of goodness and, of gathering and of, inviting people to come and have a chat and sit down and hear reconciliation, and that their bellies are full while they are sitting there, whether it's outdoors or indoors, whether it's in the hot, smothering summer sun, or whether it's in the air conditioning of the event. But I'm just wondering, is it a free-for-all, reconciliation day? I haven't well, that's not true. I've seen a couple of truth and reconciliation events that really have gotten to the heart, as well as, having a sit-down barbecue or having a sit-down and feeding those, and, bringing celebration to it, as well as presenting truth and reconciliation. But I've also seen a couple where it was just festivities. It was, just fun for the grown-ups and for the kids. They had a, improv powwow where it had the elements of a powwow, but it was very much for show and tell. And, we need to get back to the treaties. We need to get back to the reconciliation of things, and to understand the history, and to, bring back the two uniting, families, and the two uniting people, the non-Indigenous and the Indigenous. It wasn't meant to be commercialized, where we have a parade and a barbecue and this and that, and it was thrown around like a boomerang. It was meant to draw attention to the calls of action that have not been solved, that have not been presented, that have not been, paid enough attention to. So, what is reconciliation?
I feel like for me, when it comes to Truth and Reconciliation Day itself, so September 30th coming up, right? Living here on the West Coast, I feel a little spoiled. BC, British Columbia has, as a provincial government and a governance body, has done a lot of work towards really moving forward reconciliation in a real way. And so the visibility of Indigenous peoples here, the Indigenous languages here, their art, and they're different peoples and the different nations, is very, very clear and very well established, right? So Truth and Reconciliation Day here, Sunnies, they have a powwow. Not a little powwow. It's a big old powwow. Love it. I get to see some jingle dresses. I love my jingle dresses. But there's more. There's also like really important words being said, and there's a lot of learning opportunities for non-Indigenous folks to start to learn from Indigenous peoples directly about our histories, about the experiences in our communities, about our traditions, about the things that we do want to share with them and bring them into. Some places have, some peoples have some closed practices. Some people have some things they're going to keep to their heart, and that's good. That's good for them. I hope they do. Our people have things that we keep close to our heart as Haudenosaunee as well, and that's just the way of it. But there are things now we get to share and we get to see. So it was really last year during the powwow for Truth and Reconciliation Day, there are these two Songhees elders out there on the field, and they had a whole lineup of non-Indigenous folk there, and they were explaining smudging to them. They're letting them know what the whole process is, what the meaning behind it was, what the experience was for, and then inviting them to take part into it and offering them smudges. So like they're doing this really important work of education there. It was just wonderful to see the elders out there strutting their stuff and smudging all these people. I remember the first Truth and Reconciliation Day too, and that was basically a Memorial Day. Here, it was basically a Memorial Day. It was a day of many, many important words being said, and a day of a lot of tears. Lots of tears.
I could only imagine, it, because, and that was the whole, from my understanding, that was the whole reason why Truth and Reconciliation Day was originally Orange Shirt Day. And, it became the National Day of Truth and Reconciliation. And from my understanding, that's what it was about. It was educating, it was storytelling, it was sharing knowledge, it was the exchange of information. But, maybe I'm just, in the prairies, maybe it's just the city I'm living in, or it's just the place I'm living in, and we're not, in Saskatchewan, we're not able to, get the resources or get the help. And that's why it's very much, just inviting people to sit down and eat and, having a small improv powwow. But I don't know. There's just something missing about the Truth and Reconciliation Days that I show up to. And I would love to make my way out to BC, and if I ever have the chance, I'll certainly look you up and, experience the Truth and Reconciliation from your point of view. And there is a lot of work. There's a lot of gradual, bridge building, a lot of stone work, the building of the foundation of this bridge. We've got to make sure it's a strong bridge, it's not a crappy, bridge that was made out of materials from Temu or Dollarama, but, real materials with real work, with real people hitting the grit and the grind. And, there are uncomfortable topics. They're necessary to be heard. Please, if I'm wrong, tell me if I'm wrong, but from my understanding, that's the necessary steps for you to build bridges, for you to build those connections, and for it to be long-standing. If the big bad wolf comes and tries to blow down the bridge, it won't fall, it won't crumble, it will remain standing. Yeah. And that was the whole point of the treaties, is, so long as the sun shines and as the river flows, the treaty will stand. And by these words and these promises, we will be as one. Sadly, that was not the case. And so Truth and Reconciliation Day, that is the regeneration of these promises. These calls of action is to put the focus and to put the time, the skills, and the effort and the knowledge and the storytelling back into, into building a bridge, into building that, that connection of the river between our people, the Indigenous and the non-Indigenous, is to live as one. Underneath the sky, we are but one people. Underneath the grandmother moon, the grandfather sun, underneath the sky, we are as one people. That was what it was for treaties, the sharing of resources, the sharing of, the trees, of the minerals from the ground, of the oil, the land, the sharing of the atmosphere, the oxygen. It wasn't meant to be overrun or overtaken. So there's a lot of work for reconciliation.
Oh yeah, lots of work to be done. Lots of work to be done, and everybody and everywhere is in their own little space. So like, while Victoria or Vancouver, BC in general might be in one place, and it's got other spaces here though, or it may not be such the leader in reconciliation, and it might be as spinning its wheels in the mud just as much as anywhere else is. It's the best way I can say it, because I feel like lots of places right now are just stuck spinning
Yes.
that mud. Yeah, they don't necessarily know how to move forward in that real way and get traction, as you were saying, right, around your experiences with Truth and Reconciliation Day. As long as we can continue to build that awareness, like that's step one, is awareness.
Yeah.
Without awareness, then we got nothing. So if we can keep bringing at least awareness to it, we can keep these conversations happening. We can keep the kids in our memory that never made it home, and that they can come home one day. Then we're doing good work.
Yeah. And that is another point from my understanding. National Day of Truth and Reconciliation, it's not just the awareness. It's awareness, yes, but it is remembering the terrible history and, what the groundwork was laid from the European Canadians. There has to be an understanding, okay, this is what happened. We're not putting blame on, we're not singling out individuals.
No.
We are trying to make you aware this is what happened, and so this is why we feel stuck. This is why we feel, why you feel tension, why you feel retaliation, or why you feel that we're not, opening up, is because there has to be an understanding of this is what happened and this is the result. This is the aftermath we are dealing with. And as I said, to build that bridge so that it is strong and that it is formidable and it can withstand anything, even the test of time, as the treaties were meant. You have to have the uncomfortable conversations, and you have to put in real effort towards truth and reconciliation. And you have to remember the children who did not make it home. That's the whole point. And that's my understanding of truth and reconciliation.
I mean, when very much so. And this for me is just calling back to, I mentioned it briefly, right? The two row wampum. Like when that treaty, when that agreement was initially made between Haudenosaunee and the Dutch, part of it was, or when it was revisited, they added a very specific element to this, of the silver chain, of this covenant chain. And it was chosen because silver, right, it doesn't degrade, it doesn't wear away. It gets tarnished though, and it needs to be cleaned. So it needs to be revisited, and we need to remember to revisit that, clean it. And so there is this clear image of us coming back to revisit these agreements, to clean up the mess on them, clean up everything that's tarnished them, and then to move forward again in a good way. So like, let's do that. And that's what I see in the end, is what Truth and Reconciliation and this work that we're doing, not just on Truth and Reconciliation Day, not just on September 30th. This is an everyday thing for me. This is everyday work. Right? That's what we're here for. We're cleaning that chain. We're cleaning up that cover. We're clearing up that tarnish that's gotten between our peoples.
Yeah. And especially I feel it now more than ever. And I cannot quite pinpoint what it is that's happening around the world that's making me feel it now more than ever. But I'm registered with Little Pine First Nations, but as I mentioned in the last episode with my last guest, I am of mixed race. So, there's definitely the feeling, and I must not be the only one to feel it as a mixed race Native, that you're very much torn, or you're very much stretched thin between these two nations, these two races. And it's tough. There has to be an understanding from the Indigenous side and the non-Indigenous side. We're the best of both worlds, or rather we're the bridge of two worlds, but at the very best, we're how do I say it? We're the speakers, or we're the advocate. We are the person that speaks on behalf of both nations, on both races, but is there a soundboard audience that is willing to listen and willing to work with us and, come together and, really take a look at the examples. We have mixed race natives, white natives, half natives, and, you know, as a half native, as a mixed race native, showcasing this platform and creating this platform and having this platform, this podcast, I'm, bridging between myself as a reclaiming native, as, a reclaiming Indigenous woman who is finding her way back to her culture and inviting guests of, Indigenous self-proclaimed identity to, speak and to share what is reconciliation, what is truth and reconciliation, what is, you know, what is it like, the downfalls and the journey it, you know, and of where it got you for your leadership roles and your role specifically, and who you are as a person, and sharing honestly and sharing freely and sharing without being reprimanded or without feeling like you're stretched like thin wire.
Thank you for sharing that. I mean, yeah, as mixed individuals in this land, there's a lot of questions that might come up for us as individuals, and right, there's decisions that we may have to make for ourselves on who am I, who is my identity, where is my belonging, where do I belong, and where am I received as belonging. That's another important part of it, because like the whole idea of race, right, that came along with colonialism.
Yeah.
Right, like it was, do you live the way of the people, was how I would place things before the colonies showed up, before European ideas of race showed up, right? It's, if you came into our community and you lived by our ways and by our laws and by our traditions, then you are of our people. That was what I understood how things were back in the day. And that there were opportunities for individuals from other nations to choose to walk the great law of peace, choose to become a member and sit underneath the rafters of the longhouse. There is ways that we could do this that was between nations. And that's what we have to remember too, right? We're not just a single First Nation. We're First Nations.
Yes.
There's many, many nations across this land. Right? Haudenosaunee, that's 5 or 6 nations there as one confederacy. We've got Cree, we've got Wendat, we've got Huron. Just I'm listing the ones all around the lakes. That's who I'm just listing around the lakes. You come out here, and in Victoria, there's like 3 different nations that would call this place traditional home. Like they're all like the Kwangren type peoples, and from that group, and there are still multiple different communities, different lines, and different lineages there. And when I go up to the north tip of this island, Vancouver Island, and I'm in the communities there, they are very different than the communities down here. and you start to see the diversity and uniqueness in each of these first peoples, and really get to honor that in a really strong, powerful way. It's quite beautiful when you can get to really, really see the nuances between all the different people.
Yeah. There's a lot more conversations to be had, but again, not wanting to take up so much of your time, we will get to our last and final question. And again, thank you for sharing your knowledge and for sharing your time, and for giving us the time that you've given us. And I certainly hope that this raises questions and that this raises, conversations, and this raises engagement from our audience, our listeners, and our viewers. And I certainly will, follow up with a message or with an email of what I've taken away personally from this episode. And again, I hope that, I can make my way out to Vancouver and we can have a sit down conversation and we can just, have a cup of coffee or have a cup of tea and just continue our conversation and just let it carry us to new and unexplored avenues. Last question is, do you have one piece of advice for our listeners and our viewers?
One piece of advice. All those stories that we tell ourselves that we can't do something, or we're just going to mess it up, or that we're just some kind of big mistake, or that we don't know how, realize those aren't real. They're just stories we're telling ourselves, and start to write a new one. Start to write those stories that say, I can, and I did, and I will. That's, I think, the best advice I can give in this
moment. That needs to go on a t-shirt, or that needs to go on a sticker, a vinyl sticker, and hand it out as a freebie. But that is, I find truth with that. I find a parallel takeaway with that advice, because I'm here as, a mixed race native. At the beginning of this year, it was early spring, that I came up with the idea and I presented it to someone at a local round dance here at the city. And, I was sort of given that push to go for it along the lines until, the YouTube channel came and the logo and the YouTube banner and whatever else I needed to create through Canva and, express my creative direction. And, finally, I'm at the 4th episode of the podcast. There were times throughout the start of the idea to now, even now, I'm thinking, am I really doing enough? Am I really doing enough work? Am I really making a difference? Am I really putting in an effort? And there has to be a reminder for myself that I am doing something, because, I'm here. I am, dedicating my time to interviewing and asking questions and having conversations with guests. And we're touching on topics that, I never thought or would have expected would have been, talked about on a podcast, and that would, bring an invitation, or that would give an invitation for people to, spend their curiosity, in a way of, accepting an invitation to be on a podcast and to talk about what we want to talk about and what just comes naturally to us. So I will follow up with that advice: is go for it. You have my blessing, and you have my, you have my grace. Go for it. Go for that dream. You want to be the first Indigenous of whatever career, go out and do it. You want to be an Indigenous astronaut, be an Indigenous astronaut. It's going to take work, and it's going to take blood, sweat, and tears, but once you get there, there's no feeling like when you've accomplished, when you've reached there, when you've gotten there, when you've achieved your goal and your dream.
Yeah. Oh yeah. Chase them dreams. For all of our ancestors, for all of our future generations. Chase them dreams.
Yes.
Yeah. For all our relations. Yeah.
Yes. All right. Well, I better say good night and thank you, and miigwech. I'm glad you were here for the the 4th episode, and I will look forward to the time that I get to see you in person and have that conversation and have that cup of tea by your local cafe of choosing.
That would be lovely. Nyaway Goa. Thank you so much for having me on your podcast, on your show. It's been lovely spending time with you, stuff.
Wow, I am glad. I'm glad I'm not that boring, like I keep telling myself.
See, those stories, they ain't real, right?
Yeah, and thank you for the laughter, and thank you for the smiles, and thank you for the medicine of the laughter. All right.
All right.
Bye.
Have a good one. Bye.